Hey everyone, we're so excited you could join us today. Today we're bringing on Ben Fairfield. Ben Fairfield is the co-principal trumpet of the Midland Odessa Symphony and Chorale, and he also plays in the Abilene Philharmonic. And he lives, works, and teaches in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He has had many students get into the all-state competitions, and he also plays in the Missouri Symphony with me in the summers. And Ben is a great colleague and a great friend, and we are so excited to have him teaching with us this fall as part of the BDSG advancement programs. I'm Matt Richards. I'm the co founder of Band Director Survival Guide, and I also play in the Midland Odessa Symphony and the Missouri Symphony. And we are so excited to bring these advancement programs to you all this fall. It's an amazing opportunity for students to connect with some of the leading professionals around the country. If you want to find out more about Band Director Survival Guide or about the advancement programs we're offering this fall, go ahead and check out banddirectorsurvivalguide.com. And you can also find us on Facebook at Band Director Survival Guide and Instagram at Band Director Survival Guide. So without further ado, we're going to dive in today with a great interview from Ben Fairfield.
All right, so we are here today with Ben Fairfield. He is our trumpet teaching artist for BDSG this fall for BDSG program. So welcome, Ben. Why don't you, could
Yeah,
we just start by, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career
sure.
and kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And like you said, my name's Ben Fairfield, and I live in Arlington, Texas right now. And I am the co-principal trumpet player in the Midland Odessa Symphony, and I play in that orchestra's Lone Star Brass Quintet. And I'm also the principal trumpet of the Abilene Philharmonic, and I teach lessons in the DFW area and really all over Texas. I teach some students from several locations. But yeah, I grew up in Virginia, and I've been all over the country pretty much since then. I went to school in Miami for a while, and I played in an army band back in Virginia again, just by coincidence, I guess. And I have taught in Alabama for a year, and I taught in New Mexico for 4 years, and now here I am in this will be the start of my fourth year now in Dallas.
Wow. What's crazy is you're one of the fourth teaching artists that has a military band connection.
Is
So
that right? Yeah,
we've got a strong
yeah,
military
yeah.
band
That's
presence.
good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
good.
and what's great is Ben and I actually both play in the Midland Odessa Symphony together,
Yep,
and
that's right.
sometimes I get to play in Abilene with him as well. So,
Yeah.
um, well, thanks so much
And
for
and
being
in
here.
Missouri, we play in Missouri too that
Yeah,
summer.
last
Yeah,
year we shared the stage
yeah,
in Missouri as
that's
well.
right.
Hopefully we'll get to share the stage
I
soon.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know I'm looking forward to as soon as they rescheduled that extraterrestrial ET concert,
yeah, me
to
too. That'll be a
motion
like, good one.
picture.
That's got
That's
great
gonna,
music. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's a
got some.
huge
It's got some.
percussion.
It's got some rough trumpet parts. It's hard. Like I gotta get practicing for that.
Yeah, I think it's rough for everyone. So it's gonna be
I would imagine.
it'll be
Yeah,
fun
that'll be
though.
fun. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
supposed to happen October, I guess, but we'll do it maybe in the spring or maybe even next fall. I'm not sure when.
I hope so. I hope
Yeah, me
so for
too.
sure.
Me too.
Well, now that we're kind of all online and everything's moved to virtual and we're doing Zoom lessons, Skype lessons, Google Hangout lessons, what have you been doing to make online teaching awesome? Like have you made any switches to make it really fun or engaging for the students or
Well, yes and no. A lot of the fundamental work that I do is going to be the same. Like long tones are long tones. But I do like the fact that online, that I can share, like screen share, and I can do not only music, but recordings and things as well. So a lot of times in a lesson, in an in-person lesson, I'll say to a student, okay, this all-state etude is in, let's say, D major or something. So, like, we should find a bunch of D major exercises just to get you comfortable in that key, rather than just playing the scales and arpeggios. And so then, if I have some material on my computer or on a phone or iPad or something like that, I can just pop a button and we can say, okay, let's look at this technical study. It's in D major, or let's look at this other etude that will supplement the stuff here. And I also make reference to a lot of recordings to students all the time, and I wonder Well, I kind of know the answer maybe, but I wonder if they go home and listen to it. I say, oh, listen to this recording, listen to this recording. And I'm kind of like, well, it would be nice if I could play it for you while we're in the lesson. And you could get, then we could talk about it a little bit. And I can do that. You can screen share and pull up YouTube or whatever, yeah, iTunes, and say, all right, this is the recording I'm talking about. Listen to how either this trumpet player does this, or a lot of times it's this singer. I'll play them vocal recordings because if I think back when I was in high school or middle school, I certainly wasn't listening to classical vocalists sing anything. But for example, the lyrical etudes and things like that, I relate those to opera singing a lot, and the kids give me these blank looks, and I'm like, okay, hang on a minute, this is what I mean. And I'm not giving them a whole aria of things, but 30-second little clip and say, do you hear how the quality of voice is, or did you listen to her phrasing and this and that, and they kind of, oh yeah, this is kind of the same thing. So that's been
Yeah.
pretty neat. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
that's great.
instant access to information that I would share. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point because I've heard from quite a few teachers that they initially were struggling to fill like an hour Zoom lesson with content
Yeah.
because there's so much lag and oftentimes a back and forth doesn't work, or you can't just listen to them
Hmm.
play and give them feedback as they go, which was one of my favorite techniques
Yeah.
in person. All of a
Right.
sudden
Yeah.
you kind of have to do more of like a presentation and then they play, presentation and then they play. And I found in the beginning that I would run out of material,
Yeah.
45 minutes in.
Oh, for sure. And it was definitely an adjustment period for all of us, I think. Um, and I do the same thing. I like to play and have them listen to what I'm playing and then play it back. And like a lot of times in the warm up portion, we do almost exclusively that. And we're still able to do that a little bit. But there is, like say I'll play a whole note for 4 counts. They play a whole note for 4 counts. In person, it's just like bang, bang, bang. But there's a little bit of lag, and that took a little bit of getting used to. And it was kind of like, well,
Yeah.
and then you don't know what kind of audio equipment if they have any on the other side, so sometimes it can be kind of like and I'll always lean in to the computer, like it helps, and like if I can't hear what they're saying, I'm like, hey, wait, what'd you say? And I'm like, what am I, you're like 20 miles away, what are you doing? um,
Yeah.
so it is an adjustment, but
I've definitely
yeah.
I've definitely become an expert at finding that original sound button. I feel
Yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah.
tutorial, a walking tutorial on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I've had to do it a lot of times too. And I'm not the greatest audiovisual, guy. I'm not a recording engineer by any means, but I have had to learn a little bit. And I guess it's probably a useful skill to learn these days. Um,
Yeah.
and if you can help them out a little bit too, like sometimes I'll walk my students through it, like, hey, are you on a laptop? Let's check out your settings here. And they go, oh
Yeah.
yeah, this does sound better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
well,
pretty
Zoom,
neat.
I think I just got an email the other day that they're about to come out with like a music plugin that
Hmm.
you can use. It's actually supposed to run a lot more drivers and actually enhance the sound so that for
Oh, that'd be
music
great.
lessons you get a.
Yeah.
I believe it's coming out soon in the next update, whenever that is.
Oh, good. Yeah,
So
that would be great because that's one thing that is still missing a little bit is like for me as an orchestral trumpet player, it's mostly about the quality of sound, and you can get a good idea, but it's definitely not the same as sitting in the room. Um, but the more that I've taught lessons these past 6 months or whatever it is, the more I've figured out workarounds for that too. Like you can, all right, if you face this way, and I'll get more of the original sound, and we can actually make it work. So that's good. But and
ooh,
that will definitely help.
well, that brings me a really interesting question that I want to ask, and that is, so if let's say the sound quality is bad, like, what are ways visually you can kind of tell? Are there ways visually you can tell, like, if they're not making a good sound?
Oh yeah, for sure. And number one is posture. I don't have a horn by me, but like if you're sitting up and you can see like the chest is up. Like if you ever watched a really good, here I go with the singers again, but if you ever watched a really good classically trained singer, I mean they're almost like a superhero pose. Like when you take a
Right.
breath, the chest stays elevated. And trumpet playing is, well, brass playing and wind instrument playing really is similar. So if they're like sitting on a launch, or not a lawn chair, a recliner or the couch or something, and we're doing like this, the quality's not going to be great. But if it looks, if looks can be important to the audience, we're taught, and it can be important too. So like you can kind of fake your teacher out, or you can fake the student out by like, just the presentation. And but as far as like the Zoom audio part of it, if if I know they're on a laptop and they're facing exactly right at the bell is pointed right at me, they're playing right at the mic. So you gotta like I'll have them do even like 90 degrees. Sometimes some people say like 45 or this way. Like I'm just like turn sideways, and because if they're not able to adjust the audio settings, sometimes it will, it's like playing a forte piano on every note. You'll hit it and then it just drops it, and then like the last 2 seconds it'll bring it back, and that is able, at least with the trumpet sounds that I've heard, it's not perfect, but it makes it a little more manageable to listen to.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, I agree. I was just wondering because I'm always so interested in how trumpet, flute, or any instrument where you use air really
Yeah,
tells all that stuff without good sound quality. Because with percussion, like it's so physical and so
yeah,
visual, it's so easy to just be
you
like,
can see
okay,
it. Yeah,
I see, I can just see your hand and know.
yeah.
But with you guys, how do you know what's going on inside the
Well,
like
and
inside the
a
mouth?
lot of times I will have. Well, I mean, you can't see that anyway, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times I will have them like just grab them. I do have a mouthpiece behind me, so I'll have them grab a mouthpiece and like either get like pretty close to the camera straight on, or I'll have them turn one way or the other so I can see the corners of what's going on here. And I say, okay, just buzz your mouthpiece this way or buzz your mouthpiece this way. And if stuff's puckered out or they're stretching back like this, you can really see that then. And then sometimes if they're turned sideways, I'll just have them play like a whole note or something. Like, okay, play a second line G right here, and I can watch what their lips are doing. And then okay, let's turn the other way so I can see the other. Like what sometimes it'll be like this side is good, but this side is coming a little unscrewed down here, like so they have the right balance, but it's or the incorrect balance, I guess. It's like more on one side the other. So there are workarounds, and I mean, again, it's not exactly like, oh, if I'm looking at you in person I can just see it, but you can find ways to go, okay, turn this way, turn this way. It's like taking a photo shoot or something, and it's like, let me see your good side. Like, stuff like that. So there are ways, and that's kind of been a trial and error process too. Because at first I didn't have any idea. Like I was like, I can't see these students, I can barely hear some of them. So it wasn't successful from the beginning on. But at this point, it's I have a pretty good idea what's going on.
All right. So I have
Generally,
I have a question for you then, because
yeah.
this is an interesting phenomenon that I found. Have you found that some of your students are doing better with the
You
online
know,
lessons?
yeah, a handful of them, yeah. Like, it's generally the better players, like the ones that were already had a good setup and sounded good anyway. For me, I found that they actually want to take more lessons, to be honest, and so I think that's part of it. At least from for me, is that whereas I might have seen a student for a half hour a week. Sometimes now I'll even see him for an hour and a half, 2 hours, like an hour on Monday and an hour on Friday or something like that. Um, and we can get a lot of work done that way. But yeah, I think a lot of it is that they have to be a little more independent than they're so used to somebody telling them everything, like do this, do this, do this, do this. Okay, okay, okay. But now they've kind of had to work through some issues on their own, like, oh, I see what he's talking about. Now, how do I figure it out? And some of them do. Some of them do. And so I think those are the ones that you're like, yeah, that's good. That's really good. So it's a little bit of both. I think for me anyway, it's a combination of a little bit more time with some students, and also watching them kind of think a little more independently, which has been great. Um, and they're you can see the light bulbs go on, like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've had quite a few advanced students get way better on
yeah,
the online format, and a lot of it's because they have to send me recordings now, so they like
yeah.
actually listen to themselves.
That's right.
But
And I did that too in the spring when we first went into this quarantine business. I mean, it for about a week. I kind of was like, like my eyes were wide. I'm
yeah,
like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I set up for the rest of the spring semester. I set up a Google Classroom, like Ben Fairfield Trumpet Google Classroom, and I made them submit recordings as well. And I like I'll always tell them, and I have to remind myself, it's like the best thing you can do is sit here and record yourself. It doesn't take anything. Like everybody has a phone or like you can record with no issues nowadays. And like get immediate feedback from yourself. It's
Yeah.
such a helpful thing. And I know they weren't doing that, but then I made them do it, like you said, and it's been like, oh. And the analogy I make with that is when you hear your own voice on a recording, you're like, I know that's me talking, but it doesn't sound exactly like what I'm hearing. And the
Yeah.
trumpet's the same way. Like what we hear on the player side of the bell is quite often not at all what gets out of the bell into the audience. So like we might think it is, and then we listen to it and go, yeah, that's not what I meant.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I still hear the sound of my own voice, and I'm like, oh man,
Yeah,
can't believe.
we all do, I guess. I'm like, this sounds weird. Who's that guy?
Okay, so then that brings me to another one, because one group that I figured a lot of it out, but one group that initially was a big struggle for me online was teaching beginners. Do you
Yeah.
have any techniques you found that have made teaching beginning trumpet any easier?
Well, you just have, it requires a whole lot of patience. Yeah, I haven't really found any new tricks for that. Beginners are tricky anyway, because they're so excited and they just want to make a bunch of, with trumpet anyway, percussion is probably the same. Like they just want to make the loudest possible noise they possibly can. And you're like, this is
Yeah.
awesome. And it's hard to get them to slow down in person. Like, okay, listen to what I'm saying and listen to what I'm playing, and then I want you to try to recreate that. I don't want to give them a bunch of physical information because it's, well, number one, it's not necessary, and number two, it's going to go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually a decent thing online because we have to go slower. Like the pace of every lesson, beginner, advanced, whatever, has to be a little bit slower just because of the delay in information. That's actually a pretty decent thing for beginners because then they will have to take at least a second or two to kind of process what you just played or what you just said and go, okay, and then they can go. But what I found with
Yeah.
beginners in person is like, okay, Johnny, play this. Bam! It's already over, and you're like, wait a minute, like I know you didn't think about what you're doing. So it's been, I think that's been the best thing about teaching beginners is the delay. Believe it or not, the unintentional benefit, but they get a second to think about what you're saying and think about what they want to do before they actually get to do it. So
Yeah.
that's helpful, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's jump around to more advanced students then, and
Yeah.
like, what's your experience with auditions in general, personally, and also with all state auditions, and like, how does that kind of shape your students in your preparation for those competitions for your
Yeah,
students?
sure. Um, well, I've taken a lot of auditions, and only a couple have been successful. Like you're not going to win every audition you take, and it's a for those of us that have done it a lot, you realize that it's a learning process. Just the act of taking an audition in itself, it's not, oh, I'm going to go out and play and everything's going to be great. You have to kind of learn how to audition. It's a skill like you acquire, like how to play a middle G or something like that. And so I think because of the experiences that I've had, taking military band and orchestral auditions, I can then say, okay, listen, you need to plan out every little detail of that audition. And I've had pretty good success with the 3 years previous that I've been teaching here. I've had somebody in the All-State band, well, 2 years in the All-State Orchestra, 1 year in the last year in the band, and a jazz band person last
Nice.
year. Yeah, so I guess it's Region 24 and Region 25 where I teach. 24 is Plano and Frisco, and 25 is Allen and McKinney in that area. So they're like
Wow.
right neighbors, right next to each other. So my students last year, I was pretty proud of them. Were the top region students in 24 and 25, and one of them ended up playing in the top All-State band, and one of them ended up playing in the All-State Jazz Band. So
Wow.
that was pretty neat.
That's great representation. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're talented students anyway. I'm lucky I didn't. I'm trying not to get in their way. But we did talk about the process of auditioning a good bit, and hopefully they found that helpful, including the process of when you get to you go through the first day, phase one of the audition, phase two of the audition, and then when you get to, if you were selected for the all-state groups, you do have another audition when you get to San Antonio, and so we talked about preparing for that as well, and it's worked out. Like 2 years ago, I guess, I had a student that played in that Rite of Spring orchestra,
Wow.
which was amazing. Like, and I got to watch her play, and I'm thinking, man, these kids are in high school and they're playing Rite of Spring. And it was unbelievable. And I was really skeptical at first. I went into that concert thinking, yeah, I bet they get through it. And I tell you what, those students sounded amazing. It was really good. It was as good as any regional orchestra would have played Rite of Spring. I was amazed.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard that concert too. It was really good. I was
Yeah.
actually talking to Brady Smits, one of the percussion teaching artists, the other day about how like by the end of high school with my students, I'm always like fighting to keep up with them on their rudimental chops.
Yeah, yeah,
Watch
yeah.
them kind of soar by you, which is
Yeah.
kind
You're
of the
like,
goal.
oh man, it's kind of like awesome and deflating at the same time, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's good though. But well, that's awesome. I mean, congratulations. That's
Yeah,
great
thanks.
to be able to. Because I mean, if you think about it, how many trumpet players do you think audition?
I have actually thought about it, and I don't know what the actual number is, but I can tell you in 24 and 25, region 24 and 25, I mean, there's probably 140, 150 in each region, like, so
Wow.
multiply that times how many ever regions there might be. Um, and that's just
Wow.
and that's not including all the ATSSB, but they don't compete in the
So it's
same
probably at least
stuff.
2,000
But
trumpet
oh yeah, I mean, it's
players.
a couple thousand easy. Yeah,
Wow.
it's a couple
That's
thousand
incredible.
easy.
And
Yeah.
how many do they take for all state
They
band
take
for
about
trumpet?
50, and like with excluding the jazz band, which happens earlier. I think they have a couple jazz bands with five each. So there's about 10 jazz trumpet players that'll play in the conference in San Antonio, and I think it's about 50 total people that they have, and then that from those 50, they have an audition there in San Antonio, and they fill three orchestras, at least three bands, maybe more than that. So they take,
Wow.
yeah, they take a bunch of students. But
Wow.
compared to 2 or 3 thousand, you get the top 50. I don't know what that percentage is, but it's not very high.
No, that's really low. I don't want to embarrass
I'm
myself
not going to
doing
do
the
math.
math,
I'm
but
not going to do math, public
it's
math.
it's five for
Yeah.
every 200, I think,
I
right?
mean, I don't know about you. You're a percussionist, so you could probably count a little higher, but I can count to four, sometimes six, and that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't wanna get the math wrong. I'm sure someone will angrily type it in the comments.
Somebody's
But
already figured it out. Yeah.
I hope so. Please, if you know the answer, type it in the comments. But it's a
Well,
really
the
low percentage.
the problem is we don't know what the upper number is. Like we don't know how many students audition. So that's
Yeah.
just a complete guess, but it's in the thousands for sure.
But it's a cool achievement as a high schooler to be able to say that you were the top in your state, especially for such a
Oh, for sure.
huge state like Texas. What
Yeah,
are
and yeah, this one is the one. Like this is the music education state. Like no, not the one, but it's definitely one of the most prominent, well
yeah,
known, I guess, music education states. So to get into the Texas All State Band that's quite an accomplishment for a high school student. And
yeah,
and colleges look at that too, and they go, yeah, okay, that's good. And not just for music students, they kind of see, oh, well, you were dedicated enough to spend some time with your instrument, and you figured some stuff out. You had this thought process behind it, so it's a big check in some college
yeah.
applications, is for sure.
So what do you think are some of the like? So a lot of our students aren't going to become professional musicians, and that's
You're right.
totally
Yeah,
cool, totally normal. What do you think are some of the most transferable skills that you get from studying an instrument like trumpet or
I
an
I mean,
instrument in general?
well, the two big ones that come to mind are like independent thinking. Like you have to be a problem solver. Like just the act of practicing makes you better at solving problems of any kind, really, because it's not just like, okay, okay, I'm done. Like you have to. It requires a little bit of independent thinking, and the other one is time management. Because you do have to schedule, especially nowadays with all people are playing baseball and soccer and football and band, and like it's just like they're pulled in 25 different directions, so they do have to go, all right, I have to practice. here's the time that I have to do it, and I guess you don't write it out anymore. You put it on your iCal or your phone or whatever, but you do have to spend some time thinking about, okay, this is time for trumpet practice, and this is time for homework, and this is baseball practice, and whatnot. So I mean, you know how busy we all get once we get out of school. That's definitely a big heads up or head start anyway
Yeah.
on the students that don't try to learn an instrument. And
Yeah.
like you said, we're not asking everybody, all these high school trumpet players to, okay, now you're going to go audition for Juilliard or the Philadelphia Orchestra or something. And that's if you want to knock yourself out, I'll help you out and do that. But just think a little bit and plan out your day, and you're ahead of the game that way.
Yeah. Well, do you have any teaching advice or for a lot of band directors are going into their first year of teaching this year, and a lot of band directors that have
Yeah.
been teaching a long time have even said they feel like first year teachers again now that it's all online. Do you have any advice for those first year teachers that are just starting out? Some things that they can do that will help them with their brass pedagogy and with their trumpet
Yeah.
instruction?
Yeah, and especially these days, my first thought here is do not be afraid to ask people for help because like it's and especially if you're in a smaller area, in a larger area, I think you do have people that reach out. You have mentors, and like that. Even when you get on attached to a school or a school district, they'll have different mentors and things. But if you're in a smaller location where you're the music teacher and you're teaching everything, it can be pretty overwhelming, I think. And so, whether it's online or whether it's in person or whether it's from your college teachers or your peers from school, I think the biggest thing is if you need some help, please ask for it because there are many, many people that are willing to offer their experience anyway. I don't, I hesitate to say the word expert because, I guess maybe I'm an expert trumpet player, but I don't really know what that means. It's like I just am stubborn enough to practice for 6 hours a day or whatever. I don't know that makes me any more. I just put it into practice. I'm not sure I have any more knowledge than other people. I just it's one thing to learn. The knowledge doesn't do you any good by itself. You have to then put it into practice. And so I guess that's where I might have a leg up on people is that I have to put it into practice. And I'm using myself as an example. And it could be choral singing or, percussion or,
Yeah.
general music. It could be anything. But there are experienced folks that are willing to help out, especially in these strange and unusual times. I think we kind of need that, the community and taking care of one another. And yeah, just bring your patience because it's a long haul sometimes,
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
that's a good point. Asking for help because we're all in this. We're all in this
Yeah,
together. And
there's nobody on an island by themselves that has to do everything. You don't have to be Superman or Superwoman. You can ask for help, and it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually, oh, you care enough about your students to actually get some real answers. And I on the fly, and I know educators have an impossible job almost all the time anyway, because they have so many students and so many things to do. It's nice to have, like somebody that like one of us that just really focuses on this particular aspect of that job to help out from time to time.
yeah.
Um, like here again, I'd use myself as an example again, but as a trumpet player going into be a full-time band director, I mean, I would be asking my woodwind colleagues all kinds of questions about what's this fingering and how's the intonation on this, and like especially double reeds. Like how do you play this on the oboe? Like I mean, I kind of know how it works, but there again, there's the knowledge. I kind of know how it works, but I have no idea what it's actually like to do it.
Yeah.
So I would
Well,
be reaching out everywhere.
I just feel like one of the most valuable parts is someone like you who's been playing trumpet for so long, like you just have the experience built up over time to like when you see a student play something, you've seen that mistake.
Oh,
Mistakes aren't,
I've
they don't
made that
just pop out
mistake.
of the
I
blue.
still make
Yeah.
that mistake probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like these mistakes just continually pop up, and they're kind of becomes patterns where you see, okay,
Yeah.
these are the general mistakes. I mean, look at the
Absolutely.
All-State music. It's like measure so and so, everyone's gonna mess this up. And then
Absolutely.
90% of
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
do.
The day it
Yeah.
comes out, you can see where you're going to need to spend most of your time, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like
So
it's like I relate that to the students and colleagues. It's like learning a language, you know. Like a lot of our students are note processors, and I am too to a degree. They're not. They don't see the. They see each individual note rather than an arpeggio or a phrase or you know. They can't put the words together. They're still reading the alphabet rather than trying to make it have it make sense. Um, and it's so much easier as soon as you can put that one and one together makes two rather than okay one and one like
yeah,
it's so much easier, but it just takes some time and
it
somebody to say, hey, this D F sharp A isn't just three random notes, it actually makes this thing.
yeah. Well, that's another good way to get the students to kind of buy in to practicing scales and
Yeah,
arpeggios because
for sure.
I'll be honest, I didn't really know the point of doing that stuff in the beginning part of high school. Like I was just like, my teacher just wants me to do this because he's mean. Like
Exactly,
this is
yeah.
silly. Like why am I practicing this? This doesn't do anything.
I was with
And
you, yeah.
and now I'm like, man, if only I had listened to him. Like he was so smart. He was,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Now that we know better, it's like, oh, that guy knew what he was talking about. And that's another thing. I ask my students a bunch of questions, and I'm sure they get annoyed with me, but I don't care. And why is always one. Like when we do a particular exercise, like almost always, I'll start with this long tone exercise, and you can see them just glaze over, like, and I'm like, in that case, I'm like, all right, now why do you think we're doing this? I don't know, to warm up. Like, okay, well, what is it that we're trying to like? I'll pick at them, like, and because I don't
Yeah.
want to, I don't want to just go. I don't want to play long tones. I don't want to do
Well,
this. So like,
you're slowly honing their discipline because like motivation is one of those things where like it comes and it goes. Like some days you're
right?
super motivated and some days
Oh
you're
yeah,
not. But like
yeah,
discipline is the ability to do it anyway, regardless
right,
of your motivation. And
yeah,
you have to have a strong enough why to be able to have that discipline. And if you don't know why you're doing it,
yeah,
if the motivation's not there, neither is the practice.
yeah. You got to have that clarity that of
Yeah.
why. Like, why am I doing this? Oh, okay, yeah, I guess I can do this again, because it's
Yeah.
going to transfer to this, or
And it
yeah, that
helps
that
when you're doing
clarity.
such a long process like Allstate, when like you've got to learn so many etudes and you have 3 months to learn it. And
Yeah.
a lot of kids get the notes knocked out at like the first month, and then they
Oh
got
yeah,
two
yeah.
months where you're like they're like why? Like what am I doing? And you have to show them that why so clearly so that they
Right.
can
I,
keep.
well, and that's the thing that I think I can't say it's frustrating. It is a little bit, but and I was exactly the same way when I was that age. Like they play the right notes, and they're like, okay, I know this, I can do this, and I'm like, well, okay, you got to start now, but there's like so much more to that than that. It's
Yeah.
and I a lot of times I don't, if you play a wrong note, I don't care. Like does it sound good? The notes are the easiest thing to fix. I mean,
Yeah.
that it really is the easiest part of it. It's the everything else, but
Well,
students
and
don't see it
like
that way.
another thing, sorry, I just kicked my desk.
Oh no,
So
you're
now
good.
we got an earthquake here. Sorry. So the other thing though is like students never like hearing this, but like playing all the right note, like playing a wrong note doesn't just mean like you missed a note. Like playing a wrong note could mean you played the right note with the wrong phrasing.
Yeah,
It could
oh for
mean
sure.
you played the right note but at the wrong time. Like
Yeah,
so it's not just hitting all those notes correctly. Like maybe,
yeah,
you're playing a Baroque piece and you didn't do the right phrasing that like
right.
that style would call for it. So it's wrong, even though the
Yeah,
notes are
it's
right.
yeah.
It's
You
not
played
right.
an F natural there, but and that's something that going back to the audition thing you were talking about is that I will tell my students that are obviously wanting to do well in the audition and even something that advance on to San Antonio. Then we'll have the discussion that I don't know that of the auditions that I've won, I don't think that I've played. I don't think there's been one where I've played like perfectly, whatever perfectly means, but like all, I miss some notes, or I crack the note or chip the note. I mean, we play trumpet and we're human. Like, you're gonna
Yeah.
miss some stuff. Um, but that wasn't the point, like I was able to put together a convincing enough story with whatever particular excerpt it was, that it held the listener's interest enough to go, I want to work with that guy. So
Yeah.
it's really not about playing the right notes. um,
Yeah.
Now, I'm not giving you free license to just play all the wrong notes, because I said it's not about the notes, but that's step one. And students I've found a lot of times, and I was the exact same way. Oh, I played all the right notes, or I'll even hear them in an audition. Like, if you're doing an audition like at a school, like a mock audition or something, and you have to declare a winner for that class period or whatever. And like, okay, here's the ranking order, and then well, he missed the note and I didn't miss any notes, and blah blah blah. How come he's or she's ahead of me? And I'm like, well, here's why.
Yeah. Well, that's something where you as like a really accomplished musician, like you as a judge, when you listen to a player, like if someone misses a note, you can oftentimes tell like, oh, it was just like a little oopsie, but like the
Right.
overall picture of their musicianship is excellent. Whereas
Yeah.
sometimes you hear mistakes and you're like, oh, that's like a real technical problem in this person's playing. Like
Oh
this
yeah,
is
for sure.
and so there are different levels of mistakes. There's kind of
Yeah.
the, oh, like it's all
Yeah, yeah,
right,
like that just is a human error, and you miss that one, but you can really play that, and you can tell immediately. But
Yeah.
you're right. If somebody's continually doing the wrong thing, you're like, yeah, this is a fundamental issue we need to address here pretty soon.
Yeah, and like it's one of those scary things where I think I didn't realize this for a long time, but someone listening after like the first 10 notes, they already know.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
already
pretty
know.
much. Sometimes not even that. If you're taking a professional audition, sometimes it's through two or three notes, and you're like, yeah or no, instantly.
Yeah. Yeah, which is
Whether that's fair or right or wrong or not, it's just that's the way it is.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely intimidating, but well,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Do you have anything else you wanted to add before
I
we
mean, I not that I can really think of, other than like, especially at this time, we should all be real patient with one another. you know, Whether we're online or in person. And I'm talking to myself, because I find myself kind of running thin sometimes. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's the same situation for everybody. Nobody asked for any of this, so
Yeah.
you gotta try to make the best of it every day. And as long as, I think, especially with the online lesson thing, if you're like, it's just a small little improvement every day. If like the next lesson is a little bit better, I'm not looking for, like a beginning trumpet student one week and the principal trumpeter of the New York Philharmonic within 3 weeks. It's like, just get a little
Yeah.
bit better this week, and a little bit better this week, and a little bit better this week. And before you know it, a year went by, and now instead of like this much better, you know,
Yeah.
and it's this
1%
little,
better
that's,
adds up over
yeah,
time.
it really does.
Yeah.
It really does.
That's great advice, and I couldn't agree more. We're in this together, and
Yeah.
um, it's a time we're all going through it, and we're all being patient and understanding with each other as we all handle this in our
Yeah,
different
for sure.
ways. And well, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of
Absolutely.
your knowledge and talking with
Yeah.
us today. So
Absolutely.
thanks so
Thanks,
much for
Matt.
being
Thanks for
here.
having me. Yeah.
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
thank you.
All right. Well, see you next time.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks so much for tuning in today. That was a great interview with Ben Fairfield. Ben was gracious enough to join us for about 45 minutes on Thursday nights. We could talk to him. So we're sorry we couldn't bring this one live to you today. But thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this interview with Ben Fairfield. He has a lot of great knowledge about trumpet playing and about music in general. He's a fantastic performer, a fantastic educator, and the results speak for themselves. He has many students make it to the all-state ranks in jazz and in band, which is incredible. So thanks again to him for coming on. We hope you enjoyed the interview today. If you enjoyed it, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share. Let us know what you need. We're here to help, and to help make this transition into online teaching more impactful and easier for everyone. So if you need any help, please reach out at any time. We are always available to talk to you. So in addition, if you liked what you heard today and you want a little more of it, go ahead and head over to Facebook. Band Director Survival Guide. You can also find we have a private Facebook group for directors where directors and professional musicians can get together and support each other. In addition to that, we're on Instagram, Band Director Survival Guide. And you are also welcome to check out our website if you thought that working with Ben would be really impactful for you or for your students. Go ahead and head over to banddirectorsurvivalguide.com and check out our advancement programs. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back soon with more teaching artists.